Okay, so today I have my dear friend and soul sister, Stevie Callista of Farmhouse Moon with me, and we're going to talk about the astrology of 2023. And we're also going to touch on a little bit of like a year review of 2022. So, welcome, Stevie.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Wendy.
Yeah. How was 2022 for you? And can you also share what you've been up to? I know you've had some new developments.
Yeah, 2022 was like a roller coaster ride, I'm sure, for a lot of people. Definitely for me. I feel like time was strange, right? Like I grew a lot. Um, I had a lot of realizations of like how many more layers of awakening we can have and like how exciting that can be, that, not to stay stagnant.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I really liked it. I worked through like the nodes being in Taurus and Scorpio. I worked through like values and security issues, as I'm sure a lot of people did.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was good.
And you started a new program, right? Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, it's see, time is so weird. I feel like I've been doing it forever, but it's only been 6 months, I think, or 8 months. Uh I had a realization that when I do a reading with somebody and then they walk away, I really don't know what happens to them. I don't know if they've created change in their life. I don't know if what I've said has helped them. And I really was craving to go deeper with people. So I created a 4 month long program called the Soul Blueprint Alchemy Program, where I get to work with women one on one. And we go very, very deep into essentially every aspect of yourself. Um, we get to like really study the phase of life that you're in right now. And like, I often have clients that feel really stuck or they feel like they want to take a leap off of a cliff into a new version of themselves. And they're just sick and tired of like hitting the same walls or dealing with the same issues.
Mhm.
So the program is really meant for people to come in and change. Not necessarily everything in their external world, but everything in their internal world about how they see themselves and where they're at. And one of my biggest missions is to help people move with the cycles, not
Mhm.
against them, so that they're like in much more of a flow state, understanding where they are and what the invitation is versus holding on tight or holding on to fear what's familiar essentially. So I
Mhm.
like to say that I like help, I give you like a parachute and a picnic basket and like a trampoline to land on, but like we jump together and I give you tools so that
I
it's
love
not
that
so
so much.
hard. Yeah, there's like a big phoenix that grabs you and helps you, like whatever it is. Like I try to help you lean more into bravery.
Hmm.
Also just like really getting to know yourself. It's one of those programs that you get to know all the passengers on your bus, and
Mhm.
they're all very different. We have these like multiple personalities inside of us, and some
Mhm.
of them get along really well and some of them not so much. So like really understanding those dynamics and really what you're here to do in this lifetime, and also like where your gifts are too and how to put those to use versus getting, because we sometimes get really stuck in them. We'll
Yeah.
get stuck in the familiar, which is our gift, but it doesn't feel like growth. So yeah, it's been like the most rewarding work I've ever done, honestly.
That's amazing. And I just love how you described it too, because you're it's like you're helping people take these leaps that can seem so scary, but you're like assisting them and making them feel safe while they're doing it, which is that speaks to all your Taurus energy
I
so
know.
much. It's perfect.
I think I've had that realization lately and it's been reflected back to me. I'm like, okay, I guess I need to embrace this part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2022, I love that the first thing you mentioned was time because that was in my notes as well. Time is so weird. And my theory, if you want to think about it so sort of scientifically, is that our frequency is changing. So like whatever frequency that we're vibrating at, we have a different we have a different perception of time because time is like in the fourth dimension category. And if you're going between third, fourth, fifth, even sixth and seventh, you're perceiving time differently at each of those frequencies. So, same as you, when I started to think about 2022, I was like, 2022 was years.
I know. Because we were, I think when you go up in frequency, you're more present. So it's
Yes.
not that you're thinking so much about the past and the future. Because even I've heard a lot of people say recently, like, I don't really want to think about what my goals are for 2023, which
Yeah.
is so fascinating. It's like,
Yes.
because you're more present in the now
Yes.
moment. Yeah.
And that's what I'm getting used to as well. Like it's this balancing act because like, yeah, you kind of need to plan some things,
Yes.
but I think getting really, really comfortable in the present moment is the first step. So it takes some adjustment to get used to just operating a little bit differently. And I think also when you're like feeling this higher frequency vibration, it's not it's not even just the present moment. It's like all time. It's
Exactly.
like you have access to all of it. So sometimes I will be thinking about something I'm doing next week, and suddenly I think I'm in next week because I
Yeah.
probably am
You
vibrationally.
probably are.
So I'm not going to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I think it's fascinating.
It is.
And man, I really I really purged a lot this year because of like where the nodes were. I think the
Mm.
nodes being in Scorpio and Taurus, which are my natal nodes. There was a lot of Scorpio stuff coming up and just a lot of uncovering of parts of myself and a lot of like inner battling. And I really had to like duke it out with my shadow. But then I eventually learned that that's not what I have to do. My shadow just wants to be heard. Right. So now I'm kind of flowing more with that. And I started my mystery school and I that was a big leap for me and I'm learning how to just listen to myself and not be afraid to change things up if I need to. And I have to say I never felt more clear about what I'm doing here until like September or
Oh,
October.
that's so good. That's like so lovely.
Yes.
Have that, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And part of it was realizing what I don't want to be doing.
yes, totally.
So that was
So
really
like what you
awesome.
value, right? Like the North Node in Taurus is like, what do you actually value and where do you want to put your attention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to figure that out. And then I also went through this period in September where I feel like I got a peek into or was initiated into like the seventh dimension. If you
Mm.
guys listen to my episode with Donna Boyle, vibrating in the oneness, that is like it was I had this expansion leading up to that episode with Donna, and when we met, something just clicked, and I just like pew, took off in a rocket ship. And what I was experiencing was constant seamless synchronicities
Mm.
and just this state of bliss and peace that I've never like experienced for this long. It was about a week, and it was just it felt like a moment of enlightenment where I realized that I'm all of the characters in the story. It was like this super omniscient view of my life. And it didn't stay that intense after that, but it was like this really good preview. And I feel like because next year is going to be a 7 year, I feel like we're going to get more previews into that way of being or that perception or that frequency. So that was fascinating and life changing, I will say. But now I feel like I'm going back and forth between different ways of being, and it's really interesting.
It is. Our physical bodies are like, woohoo, what's happening?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
I heard someone say, shoot, who was it? It was like talking about how much light energy is coming onto the planet right now, you know, like how much the sun is giving off. And then even on the backside of the planet, there's just like we're traveling through more light, and
Mhm.
how it's not necessarily all bliss and peace. It's like whatever you're focused on in that moment, it just amplifies it. So if you're like
Mhm.
in a shadowy place, the light is obviously going to amplify that feeling so that you can look at it and bring light to it. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, like being really intentional, because
Yeah.
the light is, it can make you like go pew, or it can be like look, you know, like
Mhm.
it just amplifies.
I love
So I thought
that.
that was a really cool way of putting it. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
It's so true. It's so true.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree. And um, you just made like a million things go off in my mind on this during this Gemini moon, but I'm gonna stay focused.
It's
So,
hard to focus, right?
was there anything you wanted to touch base on for the end of this year?
So we have a pretty potent solstice, winter solstice, I would say, because well, that's the day that the sun goes into Capricorn. That day is just really, really important. You know, it's like where the
Mhm.
sun stands still and where the light comes back, and it's a representative of Christ in general, his birth, you know, that energy. I always just like to um point out how sacred that day is, and how if you can carve space in your day to honor the light and be in nature and just honor the cycle of time, like it's just it feels very sacred to me that day. I always like don't do anything on that day. um Nothing like work related, I mean. So I wanted to mention that, but Chiron's actually stationing direct 2 days later, so his energy will be in the field very much that week of
Mhm.
Christmas, which can bring up a lot of your triggers and wounds. And also, I just want to mention I'm feeling really called to, just even for myself, like because time was so weird in 2022, I don't even really know what happened. Like when
Mhm.
you were like, I started my mystery school, I was like, oh yeah, I started my Patreon, I think. And I just like, there's a lot of like, you did a lot this year, you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
it's like you said, it's years in 1 year, but like kind of, I know trying to be present, but like really going back for the year and realizing like how far you've come in 1 year, or even
Yes.
2 years, 3 years, like just kind of being in reflection. So around that time period, like just before Christmas, it might be a really good practice to just look back at each month and just be like, you know, what did I do and what's the overall themes, and just how far how much have you healed essentially.
Mhm.
Um, and then we actually, Mercury goes retrograde on December 29th.
Mhm.
And it's in Capricorn, and he meets up with Venus. So it's kind of going to bring the flavor of the beginning of the year. One, Mars and Mercury are retrograde at the beginning of the year. So this year is not like, what are your goals? And go, and move forward and get momentum. It's actually like, hang on until like the middle of January. And then we'll start to get momentum again. But
Mhm.
this year isn't supposed to start off with a bang. It's supposed to start off very slow and contemplative.
Mhm.
Um, and I think it's interesting when Mercury and Venus meet up, because it's like we're able to communicate our feelings
Mhm.
and how our thoughts influence our feelings. So that's going to be something that the end of the year and into the new year we'll be thinking about a lot, like how those two influence each other.
Mhm.
Um, and then the last thing too is Jupiter moves into Aries on the 20th of December. So he popped into Aries in the middle of this year, but for the first half of next year, he'll be in Aries, and that will help us really grow and expand at an individual level.
Mhm.
Um, and also just like take a really good look at ourselves and how we can be more confident and more of like who we actually are, like choosing ourselves. So that starts our year off too. um yeah, it's a pretty power packed last couple weeks of
Yeah,
December.
I feel the same way. And that Jupiter moving into Aries,
Yeah,
which happens on the solstice, essentially,
yeah,
that popped out at me big time because it's this exaggeration of that I am. Aries is I am, and Jupiter is like expansion. So it's already a really powerful time every year, but it's like, um, it feels like it's even more powerful because of Jupiter coming into that placement on those
Yeah,
days.
definitely.
And it feels kind of like it's a way to, I guess, when I think of Jupiter and Aries, I think of people like starting these trailblazing projects and
Yes.
doing something different, like really, really expressing who they are,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
And I noticed this just popped out at me too. The new moon on the 23rd is at 1 degree and 33 minutes of
Oh,
Capricorn.
so interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah. Whenever I see like a master number, and 33 is my numbers that I see all the time, and has special meaning for me. So that popped out at me. And I was like, I'm gonna go look at the Sabian symbol for that new moon. And it's three stained glass windows, one damaged by bombardment.
Hmm.
So um
Ooh,
the expansion of that is experiencing destruction and entropy with awareness.
yeah.
And what I saw is like we're still seeing a lot of old structures fall. You
Yep.
know, it's like we've got Pluto next year sneaking into Aquarius for a while, but it's going to come back to Capricorn.
Yep.
And so it feels like we're ending the year on like, we've still got the ending while the new is coming in as
Yeah.
well,
Yep.
and it's just like, can you just watch
Yep.
and let it fall?
Yeah. That's literally what I wrote, Wendy, for 2023, a taste of the new endings and beginnings at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
because we're sweeping up, but we're starting, and then we're going back and forth. Like, oh wait, I didn't finish this yet. It's
Yeah,
exactly it. Yeah.
totally. So you want to jump into 2023 now?
Sure. Sure. So yeah, it feels like a year where we start off slow, but we start to get a lot of momentum. And by March, there is a lot of new energy coming into uh, our consciousness. And it's definitely a year, like overall, where we're gonna see things fall because it's time for the end to be here. And we're also gonna get a taste of like the the future or like the next generation at the same time. It's a very interesting like in between year. Do you feel that way too? It's
Yeah.
like one toe in, oh, and then back, and then yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, in March we have Pluto moving into Aquarius until June. So from March until June, uh, Pluto, which usually lasts around 20 years in a sign, creates the generation. So when Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008 is when the recession happened. And usually when he comes into a new sign, he will show us the shadow of the sign because
Mhm.
that's what he does. He's the transformer. Um, and I think that there's going to be like strong like echoes of the age of Aquarius with this. Like we're going to get real taste of what it's like to be in the age of Aquarius. And essentially, Pluto being power and Aquarius being the people means the power comes back to the people.
Mhm.
And in order to do that, you have to bring light to the shadow of the corruption and, essentially the patriarchy,
Mhm.
all of the systems and structures that have kept us controlled. So the shadow side of Pluto in Aquarius, because I think it's really important to talk about that because it is Pluto, like I said.
Yeah.
um, Aquarius is very much like it can feel very detached because it's so you lose the sense of the individual with Aquarius because the collective, the whole is so exalted.
Mhm.
So sometimes the individual energy can feel really detached, um, or like leaning way too much into technology to the point where you lose your heart centeredness. And the opposite sign of Aquarius is Leo, right? So it's like Leo is the individual voice and the heart expression. And
Yeah.
so you often will see the shadow in the other side of the axis. It's hyper intellectualism to the point where, again, there's like no truth coming back into the heart.
Mhm.
And essentially, where the individual loses the power. So that's one of the shadows, some of the shadow sides of Aquarius, right? Do you have anything to add to that, Wendy? The
Um,
shadow of it?
yeah, like I think that what we're also going to see is the potential that technology has to, in both ways, the light and the shadow of the ability to control people using
Yeah.
technology. So I
Yeah.
think that's something to be really aware of is like, is my phone running me or am I using my phone? Like
Yes.
that kind of awareness. And also, I think that there's a lot of stuff, that there's a lot of strange inventions and agendas that sort of infringe on our humanity. And so, like microchips in your brain, things like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that we're going to see those things come up as options. And it's interesting because before we started recording, I said, it's weird. This next year, I see a lot of the dark stuff first before I see the light. But like, there are amazing things that we can do with technology too. I mean,
Oh yeah.
healing, for example, healing with frequency. I see that with Aquarius. There's just so many ways that technology can help us, but we just are going to have to be really aware. And I think that's what Pluto's bringing that awareness. And the
Yep.
way you bring awareness is to see both sides. So
Yep.
I just feel like also with Pluto, you do see the dark side accentuated, and it's like this choice point for us. Are we gonna be run by technology? Are we going to stay human and heart-centered, like you said?
Yeah. And it's our choice, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
it's totally up to us.
Mhm.
And like to talk about the other side of the age of Aquarius, it's definitely like just like you said, there's going to be new healing technology. We can literally heal our body using energy and frequency. I
Mhm.
just got the Healy, which is like the
Nice.
device that does that. It's like the future of science is like using frequency and energy to heal ourselves and to recalibrate. And
Yeah,
also I think like the return of ancient technology, but in a
absolutely.
modern way, like free energy and equality to the people, unity consciousness, like com-
Yes.
communal living where you trade and barter versus it being a hierarchy of a system. It's like it's just much more widespread.
I love
Um,
that you mentioned, oh my gosh, I lost it for a second. You mentioned the technology. I'm all about that. I feel that with Uranus and Taurus big
yeah,
time.
yeah,
And then the oh, what I wanted to say was that we are connecting to each other more. That's
yeah,
what's wild. It's almost like we're becoming more telepathic.
yeah,
And so what's being asked is to be your whole exalted self
yeah.
and
Sovereign,
right, to
sovereign.
be sovereign while you're able to
Yes,
connect to these
yes,
larger streams of consciousness. So
right.
that's a new thing kind of for us. It's ancient and new. It's coming
It
back.
is
Yeah.
totally. And then even like it's not necessarily it's like different than it was, right? Because
Mhm.
it's a new time. It's in
Right.
like the stage of Aquarius. So it's like we're gonna see where science and spirituality really, really can come together. And
Yeah.
also, like you said, the shadow would be because we're so connected, using that against the people. And then if you lose your sovereignty, then you can get controlled by it.
Right. Right.
So and we were seeing that like in China, and it's definitely the shadow side of Aquarius. But really like becoming even more and more innovative in ways to connect with each other.
Yeah.
I'm excited about that part,
Well, this
like
is what it's all pushing us to do. It's pushing us
exactly.
into these new ways of being like, you wouldn't change if you didn't have a problem to solve, right?
It's so true. It's so true. And even like with the Healy, like just a really small example, my
Mhm.
cat got cut in the eye all the way to his iris by, he was probably hunting something outside. And I ran this program on him, and what came up first was eyes. And so then I ran the eye program on him, and the next day his eye was so much better. Like
Wow. I've
it's
been
like
curious about those.
it's so yeah,
Thanks
like
for
yesterday
sharing
my
that
brain was
story.
all
That's
scattered.
fun.
yeah, yesterday my brain was all scattered. So I ran a program and it was talking about like mental came up, you know? So then I
Yeah.
put the electrodes back here and I swear I was like, okay, now I can ground enough to actually focus. But like that kind of technology is like it's just it gives the power back to the people, you know,
Yeah.
like we can take the power to heal ourselves, and we're doing it. It's not just through frequency, but we're doing it through meditation and our food and all of that too. But it really gives us like a leg up on not being so attached to right health insurance and the pharmaceutical companies and
Right.
doctors, and
Right.
yeah, just ways where the people can have the power back.
Totally. And what you just
Yeah.
said too, just I got this feeling of like, oh, I can go through any kind of turbulence, like if I can take care of myself, you know? And it's interesting because that, oh my gosh, I just lost what I was gonna say. Yeah, I don't know. It's gone.
Move away into the 40.
Thanks, Gemini.
And it's gone. Yeah, it's just going to be because it's only from, you know, March until June, Pluto being in Aquarius, it's going to be a small taste of what the next 20 years will be like. And
Mm.
then he goes back into Aquarius next year. So March, we also have, go ahead.
Sorry, I just remembered what I was gonna say because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like it's pretty it's interesting or significant. I think that with the energy healing, what's cool about it is that we are just becoming more aware of energy and sensitive to it.
Yep.
Sensitive meaning we feel it now. So of course we have these devices coming along that are going to work for us because now that's a part of us we're aware of that maybe we haven't always been aware of, you know?
Yes.
So um,
Yes.
and with all the different, you know, even technical frequencies in the air with technology and cell service and all that kind of stuff, it just makes sense that we would start focusing on that kind of healing and being aware of our energetic field.
Yeah, and even like what you were saying with that made me think of how people are really understanding the sun's energy and how much we need to get back to, you know, putting our eyes into the sun in the morning and like rewiring our nervous systems to the circadian rhythms of the sun and nature itself, or even just like you know, microdosing and ways that we're like connecting with the spirituality of the actual earth too, and pulling back into that natural cycle
Yeah.
to heal. Like, and it's so funny. Sometimes I'm like, duh, humans. It's like so simple, you know, like some of that. It's just, it's fascinating how we're becoming more and more aware of where we've lost control.
Yeah.
I swear the biggest hoax on society is like the demonization of the sun. I swear. I want to
Yeah.
like make a t-shirt about it. Like, oh. And just like that awareness of like, of course, nature is what heals us, you know? Of
Yeah.
course.
Totally.
Yeah. Um, so also in March we have Saturn shifting signs from Aquarius to Pisces, and he will be in Pisces for 3 years, 3-ish years. So I think this is going to be really fascinating because Saturn is so structurized
Mhm.
and Pisces is so free flowing.
Mhm.
The two together I think is going to be really really interesting, but I do see two things with spirituality here. One, like the legitimizing and structuring of spirituality and making it more of a legit situation, or like just kind of, I don't know even know how to describe it because Pisces is so all over the place, but I just see that like you're going to see spirituality and spiritual science become more legitimate, quote unquote.
Mhm.
And with the shadow of that, I also see it being policed, if
Huh.
that makes sense, um,
Interesting.
because of Saturn. So I'm very curious. I don't really know how to take that one, honestly. Like when I tune into both of those energies, I'm like, this is, it could, because of Pisces, it could go any which way, you know?
Yeah. I
Uh,
kind of felt like the what I saw with it was bringing our dreams into form, like
Yeah.
bringing our dreams into reality, but also then the shadow side was delusional rules and control. So like I
Yes.
think Saturn was in Pisces during the rise of Hitler, and so it's this like if you can't tell what's going on, there can be people who can really strange people who can rise to power. And it's
Believe
kind of that
that.
fogginess. Like, I don't see who's pulling the strings. I don't
Yeah.
see who's actually in charge here. And again, we come back to like, that's why sovereignty is going to be so important next year as well. It always is, but that
Yeah.
feels like a big theme for next year.
Huge theme, huge theme.
Yeah.
And like asking yourself constantly, like, is this my truth
Yeah.
right now in this moment? Like, and I do think it could be really polarized. Like in one way, you could be very delusional to be structurized,
Mm.
but in another way, it could be that the shadow side of that would be like to bring out who has been controlling us and
Hmm.
where we've been delusional, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see
I liked
maybe
how
the
you put
fall of the
that.
media. Like it could be something because, Pisces is the media.
Hmm.
So, um, and down the road, it'll be interesting when Saturn meets up with Neptune. But uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I think this also kind of plays into where spirituality and science mesh, like
Mm.
meshing the quantum physics with the understanding of all energy on new levels and where spirituality can be really legitimized and structurized. I also see it as like it becoming more mainstream, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I already
Um,
see that. I mean, I go to like
yes, it's
Marshalls
inevitable.
or Walmart and it's on t-shirts.
I
Like
know.
um and
Great.
I also wondered, do you think this could point to water issues?
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I could definitely see that. Absolutely.
Just like putting an emphasis on like having clean drinking water and things
Yeah.
like that. That's sort of what came up when I was looking at.
Yeah, that's interesting because that makes me think about how we're going to become so much more aware of how energy affects us just in general,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and when you're more energetically affected, you're more aware of how hydrated or dehydrated you are because you're like, oh, I'm conducting electricity all day. I need a lot of
Yes.
water.
It's so true. It's
Yeah.
so true. I'm so like I'm so jazzed about that side of spirituality coming like just really where we start really understanding our magnetic frequencies and our energy frequencies and how we can use them to benefit ourselves and understand ourselves. Like
Totally.
it's so cool. Yeah, so cool. Um, so we have Jupiter and Chiron in Taurus, or I'm sorry, in Aries until May. Jupiter is in Aries until May. So we touched on this earlier, but a sovereignty,
Mhm.
and expansion and healing of the self. I definitely think bringing bravery and like your personal power back and having the bravery to take steps forward and take action to start the damn thing that you want to start to make your dreams a reality, you know? Um, Aries is the most brave pioneering sign and they're not afraid to just move forward with whatever it is that they're working towards. So if you can kind of hold that in your consciousness of like what is it that you want to start next year, you will have a boost of fire behind you to do
Mhm.
so. um and it's just, Jupiter and Aries is definitely, it echoes themes around choosing yourself and what do you want, and without caring, or with just like no fucks given, just choosing myself, like that. It's really a beautiful kind of energy.
Mm.
And I think people are really going to learn a lot about themselves. So it's a good year to study your human design, your astrology chart, your anything to do with like your soul level self and who you are at an individual level as a spark of the divine, like kind of discovering those pieces and parts. It's a very good year to do that, or at least the beginning part of the year. Um, and then Jupiter moves into Taurus in May, which, as you know, I'm so excited
I
about
know,
that.
that's what I wrote. I'm like, I'm really excited for that.
And if you don't know, whoever's listening, like Jupiter expands whatever it comes to. He's kind of like the Santa Claus planet. He's good. He can overdo it. That's his shadow, like
Yeah.
way overdoing it, or dreaming way too big and not taking any action, right? Like putting it on your dream board and then just sitting there like that.
Yeah.
No, not how it works. You have to take devoted steps forward. But Jupiter definitely expands and brings ease to the sign that he's in. And
Mhm.
because Uranus has been in Taurus, kind of rocking our boat, having Jupiter there is going to be really interesting.
Mm.
And Jupiter is a social planet, as is Saturn. So he gives us echoes of like what the social consciousness will be going through. And in Taurus, it's, um, new financial systems, new really understanding like what your values are and how you can bring resources to those values. Also, I just see a lot of people getting really jazzed about nature,
Yeah,
like
totally. That's what
healing
excites me so
nature.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, and like our food systems, things are going to feel good because when a sign goes into Taurus, you come really into your senses. So the way things smell and touch and taste. And when Jupiter's there, like those things are going to feel yummier, like
Yeah.
food in general.
I saw people getting together and like learning and teaching how to grow
Yeah.
food and cook and just like
And
really
breathing.
enjoying these basic things. And then
Yes.
also, like you said, it's this expansion of your values. Like in Taurus, it's like to me, the simple things are, I guess it can get lavish, but it's like bringing those values back to the earth and the things that come from the
Yes.
earth and how she has everything we need, you know? So it
Yeah.
feels like
Yeah.
is that grounding? I mean, Jupiter is so gaseous, but it feels like it gives us this grounding we may need.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the two will be infused together.
Nice.
And like you said, like when I imagine that, I just imagine people like holding up a flower and just being like, oh my gosh, so beautiful. Like it is very simple, like the
Yeah.
pleasure in your senses or the taste of something or um and honestly, like just kind of reevaluating not only healing the earth, but like what it is that we value in the first place. It's like,
Mhm.
you know, um, and what kind of value do you bring to the table? That's very Taurus too.
Mm.
And perhaps some growing and healing around that if you feel like you have worth issues, self-worth issues,
Mhm.
um, finding your worthiness. And then in July, we have the nodal shift, which is like dun dun dun. It's such a when the nodes shift, it is a very, very big deal. It's like our collective karma shifts energy from two archetypes to two other archetypes. So it will go from Scorpio Taurus, which is where it's been for the last couple of years, into Libra and Aries. Um, and I keep thinking about this, Wendy, like Scorpio Taurus is so embodied.
Mm.
It's like we went from Gemini Sagittarius, which is like intellect and we're talking and it's information and like, oh, and then we're like boom, like right into the body
Yeah.
with Taurus and Scorpio. And for some people that can rock you because it's like those are fixed signs that stand still. They're not moving around. They're like, deal with it here. Um, and it's so physical. Even Scorpio has those kind of vibes for me, at least I think so.
Totally.
Yeah. And with just going back with Scorpio and Taurus, it's about resources and shadow work and death and rebirth and, feeling like you are in your body and you're safe. Um, our money systems, our food systems, like that's why we saw a lot of those issues. But when we move into Libra and Aries, that's a cardinal sign that just goes forward. It's like here to move forward. So the energy is going to very much shift from standing still to moving forward. Um, these are definitely themes around self and sovereignty and relationships. The South Node is where the karma lives. It's where you see the shadow. And in Libra's shadow is trying to over harmonize people,
Mm.
people pleasing.
Mhm.
Um, it's over diplomacy. Is that a word? Like it's like trying to be so compromising that you end up losing yourself completely.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a time period where we're going to reharmonize ourselves. There's an opportunity to do so through your relationships, like the mirroring back and forth when those shift is going to be huge for people.
Yeah.
Realizing that relationships are no longer serving you, like you're going to see a lot of breakups and a lot of um, relationships ending and beginning, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you see for that?
Yeah, I feel like it's really about figuring out how to be who you truly are and balance that in relationships.
Yeah.
It's about like stepping into your true self and not being afraid to just be that, which with that being like the north node, I guess, that could be a little bit uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
if we want to if we want to be visionary and have some sort of influence on the people around us, we have to start showing ourselves like truly who we are and not do this people pleasing thing like, oh, this person can't handle what I'm going to say. I mean, there's some degree of that still that we're, just social cues and things, but I feel like there's going to be this empowerment
Yeah.
around just fully being who you are and letting your weird be just there and not think it's weird,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Being brave, like
Yes. And
brave to be yourself.
I also, it's like the better that we understand ourselves, the better we can understand others. Um, and some of us, like me, for example, I examine others a lot to understand myself, but it feels like, and that's fine, whichever order you're doing it in, but understanding the self is going to be so important because then you'll just see right through what somebody else is doing. Like you'll be able to observe what their behavior is and like why they might be doing that and then how you can respond. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Rather than getting upset or triggered by what people do. You can just see, oh, I think that's what's going on there, and that's not my problem. I feel like this coming year is so much about energy and the aura,
Yeah.
and I think that really familiarizing yourself with your own energy is super helpful.
Yes. Yes. And isn't it fascinating too, like you said, like Jupiter will be in Aries before this shift.
Yeah.
We get this really expansive opportunity to take a really hard look at ourselves. Not even hard, just like true, a true
Mhm.
look at ourselves right before that shift happens. And then it moves into Taurus, which is like in the body. So it will help ground these energies.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, I think
Yep.
that's really a cool combination. But I
Totally.
really think like overall next year is going to be the fall of structures that like the crumbles that need to fall
Mhm.
um in order to create our new earth, and our the new age of Aquarius. So it's like the fall of power and bringing it back to the people, and not necessarily this is all going to happen in 1 year, but I
Right.
think we're going to get really strong tastes of this,
Yeah.
and perhaps where the people have lost their power so that we can take it back more. I think
Right.
that's going to happen. It has to come up, right? Like the shadow has to come to the surface
Yeah.
for us to think
Absolutely.
about it. Yeah. But it's up to us. We are the creators. Like we could do whatever we want to do with these energies. And if we're putting our energy and focus on things that are shitty and things that we don't like and things that we're scared of, and like
Mhm.
that's where the energy flows. So we have to be really careful to take our power back.
100%.
It's like the most important thing ever. Yeah. And I also just want to remind everybody, like, one thing that I remind myself of all the time is that I came to this earth. I chose this. I chose this time period to like help humanity move through this darker energy into a much higher frequency.
Mhm.
And it is up to us how fast or slow we want to do that. So
Mhm.
I personally believe that it's going to happen either way.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but like we came to participate in this time because our souls were really excited to watch it go down. And so
Yeah.
let's do it, you know, let's like,
Yeah. Well, I
it's
like when I was writing about this year, I called it the year of the Philosopher's Stone
mm,
because it's a 7 year and you have 7 steps in alchemy. And it really feels like the past year we've been gathering all of these tools and remembering a lot of our gifts. And this coming year, we start to practice more alchemy, and it's for ourselves and in turn for the collective. And
yeah,
that what alchemy entails is turning lead into gold. So it's like these shadow aspects we keep talking about and trying not to go too dark. That is our material to work with. That's the prima materia. That is what we're transmuting. And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. And it starts with yourself. It starts with um, transmuting whatever it is within yourself that is holding you back from living in your heart and leading with your heart in your own life. And it's like we underestimate what an amazing power that is and how effective and how much of a ripple effect that has when we each do it for ourselves. And then, it feels like when you kind of, as you're discovering this for yourself, you can share these techniques with other people, or you can share whatever it is. Even just if you're somebody who's really good at dancing and making dancing videos on Instagram or something, like you're sharing your light with people and you're making their day better. It's like you're transmuting somebody who may be in a bad mood into feeling good. So it's all about not getting bogged down by it all and seeing it as your material to work with. And I like to think of it as the soil. It's the soil is dark and it's damp, but that's where you plant the seed and that's
right.
where you grow something new.
Oh,
So,
I love that analogy. So true. And I
yeah,
think that getting back to nature and back to your natural cycles and back to not letting technology control you, you know,
yeah,
like using it to your benefit, being really aware of it, and then taking the time to ground and nourish and get back into flow with what is, you know, natural to us. Like that is going to be the balancing point here, I think.
yeah, totally.
And so important. But I think Jupiter and Taurus will make it feel really good. Like
Yeah,
people start creating new routines around it that will probably be really good. Yeah.
I'm excited for that.
Me too. Me too.
Do you have any more transits that you wanted to talk about?
Um, let's see. Those were like the main ones. I believe Pluto will be squaring the nodes. So while he's in Aquarius, he'll be squaring the nodes.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, which will be like even more of probably why we're feeling so much into the Pluto shadow at first.
Yeah,
Um, the Pluto Aquarian shadow.
yeah,
uh, but I also believe that like that's really helpful because it helps push things right up to the surface that
right.
really need to be taken care of and dealt with. So, but yeah, that's what I had written down.
You know what thought just came to me, Stevie, is like, oh, I live on my Pluto line and I get so serious. And I just thought about how it will be nice when Jupiter moves into Taurus, because this
Uh,
feels like motivation to like go outside and have fun.
yeah,
Like that
like
is
fun
something that,
fires and stories and like yeah,
yeah, and
chilling.
and I've been trying to think about like different ways to like break out of my normal thing and like go have fun and like lighten up and not get too heavy with it all. So, um, yeah, I
God,
was just thinking
I
about
bet you microdosing is going to be really, really strong during that period of time.
that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah,
it's amazing when you think about fungi and mycelial networks. That's how consciousness works. That's the
exactly.
physical
That's what I'm saying.
representation of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a quick way to get there to for your you get it's almost like a frequency match when you do it, you know?
Yeah.
It's like boom, like you ground into the collective consciousness, like, oh yeah, I'm one with everything. It's like a
Yes.
fast track. It's a beautiful tool for sure.
A few other things that came up for me when I was thinking about next year is I can see us starting to also gain more knowledge of how the energy of the earth works, like ley lines and chakras of the earth. Cause I just heard like all seven chakras, like all of Earth's chakras will be activated. And I kind of laughed because I'm like, I don't exactly know what that means. Also, I'm kind of like, they're not already activated, like, so, but I heard it so clearly. And
Mm,
it made me want to start learning a little bit more about ley lines and things, which I know I already know somewhere deep down, but it's like, okay, time to remember.
yeah.
And I see like people learning this and starting to understand how this energy flows through ancient sites that were built on these points, for healing, for spiritual enlightenment. And I also sort of got in touch with the goddess Sachet. She has the seven petals above her head, and she's a scribe, an Egyptian scribe. And I heard rewriting history, but rewriting was like in quotation marks because the history we have written leaves out so much. It leaves out a lot of the divine feminine.
Yes.
So I see all of that suppressed or hidden history or forgotten history, whatever you want to refer to it as. I see that rising up within us.
Yeah.
And it's just a continuation of this like divine feminine energy rising and Atlantis rising because
Mm.
the Aquarian age feels so Atlantean to me. Like it just feels like a technological society, and it feels like there's the same karmic lessons coming up for us to learn, which is to not let technology take over. Like what happened in Atlantis is that people had their creative power, which we have forgotten over time. They had that creative power, but they were going against natural law and doing weird stuff with it. And
Yeah.
so we're now remembering our creative power, and we need to use it wisely if we don't want to get ourselves in trouble. So it's like, I love all of this earth energy that's coming up because it's a remembering. It's a remembering from that time of how to use the earth's elements, our knowledge of energy and frequency to create, to
Yeah.
become really powerful creators. And
Yeah.
I pulled a card from my Atlantis Oracle deck because I was feeling this energy so much. And I love it because it totally aligns with what we've been talking about. I pulled the manifestation card, and it's a
Mm.
bunch of selenite towers. And it talks exactly about what we're saying is that what you focus on, what your beliefs are, what your thoughts are what you're creating, what you're attracting. And so I'm really just seeing this year as like an observer mode type of thing. Like, get in your observer mode, just witness, the things that are happening, and then really invest yourself more in what you want to create in your life. And
Yes.
that could look a lot of different ways, but there was that. And yeah, just the energetic, being aware of your energetic field. Last year I was looking at our personal numerology. Both you and I had 7 personal years, and next year are 8 personal years. So we've both sort of had a preview to this 7 energy, which I don't know about for you, but for me, I've had a lot of realizations about like situations I can and cannot be in. And I've had to learn how to set up things in a way that works for me. Whereas I used to be very like, oh, the ball's in your court. You call the shots, and I'm having to learn how to be like, okay, I have this amount of time. These are my parameters. And not to be too strict with it, but just to understand my energy levels because I was finding myself getting depleted. And I was like, whoa, like, okay, what's going on here? And I really had to learn how to manage my energy. And that's going to be big for this next year for everybody.
Huge. That's a really, really good point, especially being generators. Like it's really important for us to keep our energy. It's like precious. If
Yeah.
we want to use it wisely. I completely feel the same way. I learned the same exact things. And then, like working through the guilt of that, because I had a
Yeah.
lot of that, right? Like, and now that kind of has washed away. And I've realized that I can be so much more potent and powerful if I am aware of that and I choose that for myself. And I think that is going to be a huge thing next year for people,
Yeah.
for sure. And another thing too, what you were saying is like one of the number one shows on Netflix is Ancient Apocalypse right now. Did you see that?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, like
Let's
everything.
talk about this. Oh, I've
Yeah.
got some things to say. Go ahead though.
Well, it's just like I uh I love that uh I love that things that we've been studying for a while are starting to become mainstream.
Yes.
It's so exciting and people are becoming so much more open to the idea that like maybe the history that they learned in school isn't quite the whole picture,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
also just like how close-minded science can be,
Yeah.
like mainstream science and how much more we don't know anything.
Well, and it's not necessarily the science, it's the people who are funding the science
Yes,
that are
yes,
manipulating it,
mainstream
right?
funding of science, yes,
Yeah.
manipulating it and how like closed off they are and why is that, and we're
And
all starting to question it.
it's an ego thing too. I mean, you'll see it
Completely.
if you watch Ancient Apocalypse, how these academics get like infuriated if you propose a new idea and it's like an ego game. It's like, no, we already carbon dated that or we already established this. You can't change it, And it's like,
Which
that's
is crazy.
I know that's not how it should work. People should stay
Crazy.
open-minded.
Yes,
And
100.
this comes back to being comfortable in yourself because if when you're comfortable in yourself, you can listen to different ideas and not feel threatened, you know?
Yeah.
But that show, oh my gosh, I absolutely loved it. There was just one thing that I didn't love, and it was getting to the end. They kind of put this spin at the end, like I see a first I saw the bad side and then I could kind of see where maybe I could twist it in a good way, but they're like these civilizations were destroyed by the torrid meteor showers and if we don't change something like this could happen again. And I was kind of like you're planting a really big seed right there on Netflix. Like you
And
are.
you're making something so absolute that's also not open to interpretation. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
like
So
saying this is what happened.
yeah, yeah.
Really weird.
And so I didn't like that aspect that it felt like they were planting a big fear seed.
Sure.
Um, and I just in my heart, I don't see that happening to us. I think that's what it is. And it's really funny because it's hard to say, it's hard to explain why I feel that. I just feel it. So when I heard that, it did not feel right to me. But the rest of the show, I absolutely love. The only one good takeaway I could see with that is like, I was like, maybe they're trying to say, like, hey, humanity, get your shit together, or like, we're gonna
Yeah.
go down. And I was like, okay, I can kind of get that.
Light
But
a fire under our asses. Yeah.
I almost feel like that show only made it to Netflix if they put something weird like that in it,
Yeah.
And so at least most of it was really really good and the information is out there because a lot what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to watch this show and see these temples and start having memories come back,
Yeah.
and it helps people reawaken those ancient memories and that spiritual energetic side of us. It just speaks to your soul, if you live during those times.
And then like the realization around all the indoctrination that has happened in school, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Because I know I unschool my child and she's 7, and I feel really passionate about like giving the children the power back because they are like the most important aspect of our future, like
Yeah.
truly so cheesy, but it's so true. Like
It's true.
raising them differently. So I think all of these things are little sparks to kind of get people thinking about where have you been indoctrinated, where have you been programmed, where have you been controlled. And I think next year is really going to give us a taste of like, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
this is not for me and this is not what I want for myself. And I even thought like, I think it's interesting with what you said about yourself in general. um I lost my train of thought. Where did it go? Gemini moon. Oh, I think it's going to be really important next year with Jupiter in Aries to allow yourself to experiment, because
Mm.
Aries likes to start things and they have enough bravery to pioneer and lead,
Yeah.
but sometimes they get bored because it's
Yeah.
not exciting anymore. And I think when Jupiter moves into Taurus, it will give us the energy to complete whatever we started in Aries. But just kind of like Aries energy is very experimental.
Yeah.
It just likes to try new things just for the sake of, because it's exciting, you know? So
Yeah.
allow yourself to like experiment too.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good point because I think sometimes we're like, what? It's funny. It's like we've remembered all these gifts and things, and then it's like time to start utilizing them. And so there is always experimentation when you're new to something,
Yes.
just figuring out what works, what doesn't.
Yeah,
And
you're like the explorer. It has to go that way.
yeah, there was something you said that reminded me of some notes I made. Oh, Uranus. I was just, Uranus has been in Taurus for a while. And how do you know how much longer he is there?
It's 2017 he popped in, right? Let's look in the nerd book. I finally got a paper ephemeris. Okay, so his cycle, well, he popped into Taurus May of 2018. Maybe it wasn't 2017. Yeah, May of 2018 until I want to say 2020. Gemini. 2026. Well, he pops into Gemini for a moment in 2025,
Okay.
but it's not until 2026. So 2018 to 2026 cycle.
So I'm pretty excited about the Uranus and Taurus cycle because, you can use the Earth's elements to create free energy. And that's what Uranus and Taurus is so much about to me. That's what speaks to me from
Yeah.
Uranus. And there are Randall Carlson was talking on the Joe Rogan podcast about how there are scientists who've been doing research in secret and having their inventions patented so that they can't be suppressed anymore. And so this technology is actually making its way into the mainstream. So that is going to revolutionize um, our energy resources.
Can you
And
imagine? Can you imagine?
I know. And that's where this time is so exciting because that's such an Aquarian thing too,
Yes.
right? Like you were mentioning that earlier. And so we literally we came here to see all of these changes. And the thing with Aquarius too, with him being the water bearer, like don't get grossed out, but he's spilling his seed. That's one way to see it. And I feel like we are the generation that, well, not just our generation, but in this time we're living in, everyone who's here is spilling the seed and planting the seeds for where we're going. And that's always true, but where we're going is a huge shift. It's a huge shift in consciousness. And it's about regaining some of that spiritual side of us that we've forgotten. And with that just comes a higher understanding of the earth and her elements and how to be here. You wonder how did ancient people survive? Well, maybe they just had a way better understanding of nature and the earth,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. Use her
Um,
resources
yeah,
and not use her at the same time. So she was constantly generating energy.
and that reminds me, the other thing with Uranus and Taurus is um I see regeneration. Like I
Yeah.
see earthquakes, volcanoes,
Yeah.
just like some shaking up and some regeneration of land.
Yeah.
And so and even with like the mushrooms, you keep bringing up the mushroom. I'm wearing a mushroom shirt
I
today.
know. That's probably why I'm talking about it.
It's about learning how mycelium works. There's mushrooms that can break down plastic. It's like, who could imagine that nature can repair damage that we've done?
Yeah.
It's like she's that amazing. Like
Oh, yeah.
we have all the solutions. All we need to do is open our eyes and go outside.
Yeah. And like with Uranus, like how much freedom he
Yeah.
brings when, like, imagine not being tied to fossil fuels and, gasoline and having to pay for electricity and, like how much money that would free up for
Yeah.
people. And then at the same time, like, imagine not like also having the free energy just in general. Like how much more we could be doing with this, how much more freedom it would bring.
Totally.
And then even with like this, even this little tiny Healy device, like if we have these technologies to heal ourselves and we're freed up from, because a lot of people, they stay in jobs for healthcare,
Yeah.
for having, because they feel like they need to have that. Like imagine that down the line, where you're
Yeah.
not like stuck in a situation because you're reliant upon another system and structure, you know,
You nailed it,
that's
man. It's about
just
freedom.
making more money. Yeah, freedom. Fucking freedom.
We're here for it. We're planting the seeds.
Oh,
I hope we get to like see some of these fruits of the seeds that we're planting. I think we might.
I think we will. I feel like our souls are like, we really wanted to, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like,
And then again, if we don't, we can come back if we want
yeah.
to.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm done, Wendy. This is it. This is it for me on Earth. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do really love her a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this was so great.
Yeah,
Thanks so much,
thanks.
Stevie.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always love talking to you. I feel like we could talk for 17 hours straight, but
I know.
our generation of energy would be depleted by then, I'm sure.
Totally. Awesome. Well, I hope everybody has a good end of their 2022 and you're ready to dive into 2023 and just apply these beautiful gifts that you have. Share them with the world.